Welcome, everyone, to the Kentuckiana Travel Ball Podcast. This is our second rendition, our second podcast. I'm super excited to have a special guest with us today. Trinity's head baseball coach, Rick Arnold. Rick is not only a good friend of mine, but Rick's also kind of my baseball mentor. Most of what I do on the baseball field has come from Rick in one way or another. Rick is also a big reason of our Wolves team's success. He's worked with us quite a bit in the offseason, and we took a ton of what he showed us, and we've been able to instill and continue to teach. Very grateful for what Rick's been able to do for me and for our program. Morning, Rick. How are you?
I'm good, T.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, number 1 team in Kentucky, number 14 team in the nation. Let me tell you what I think the most impressive thing is about your Trinity team right now. All of your seniors, and correct me if I'm wrong here, all of your seniors have some sort of college offer right now.
One step further, they're actually all committed and or signed with their colleges.
That's incredible. So, I mean, is that something that you guys actively do? Is that just the testament of the talent on the team, or is that something you're actually, as a coach, helping these kids get to that level?
Well, it's a combination of all the above. We work really, really hard in our player development program, if you will, stuff during starting the fall of their freshman year. So if they come to Trinity and they play baseball and they don't play football or soccer or run cross country in the fall, we have workouts 4 or 5 days a week on our field. We're lucky enough to have a 100% turf, beautiful new stadium over there at the complex at St. Matthews,
which is incredible.
It is, and we're blessed to have that. And we went kind of from the outhouse to the penthouse in terms of our old field down by the river to what we play in and practice in now. So, from a player development standpoint, players come in, and in the fall, everyone's invited. So, at Trinity, we have we might have 30, 40 freshmen try out for baseball. In the olden days, there'd be 100, right? When you and I were in school.
Sure, tons.
Now a lot of those kids are in year-round basketball or lacrosse or whatever, but 30 or 40 is still a big number when you're going to keep 17, 18, 20,
sure,
20 freshmen. So in the fall, it's open to everybody, and we run fall workouts as a developmental / practice type of setting, and so we make sure they're getting a lot of ground balls and a lot of fly balls and a lot of opportunities to hit off machine, to hit off live arm. We do a lot of scrimmages, and so that development starts their freshman year. So as you fast forward, 4 years of that, and again, if a kid is in a fall sport, great. They'll start with us in January. And in January, we go indoors, we go outdoors on that turf. As long as it's above 32, we're outside doing something, maybe for shorter windows if it's cold, but we're getting some work in. And we have a very methodical process to helping kids improve. Now, again, that's great. It's also tougher to make our team. So the talent, yes, we have.
Yeah, of course.
We get some talent to choose from, but we develop that, and we start in 9th grade, and it works all the way through 12th grade. So, and the big time recruits meaning the Division I type
your
players.
Daylen Liles, your Corbin Dickersons.
Sure. And we've had Brandon Fotts. We've had a bunch of them through the years, Ben Metzingers and Matthew Higgins, and we've had a number of them. Those are guys that, and not everyone went to a Power 5 school. I mean, Brandon Fott went to Bellarmine. I mean,
right.
He was a 5th-round draft pick.
Right.
But his development now, when I got the job at Trinity, he was a sophomore. And he'll tell you this, he was not in great shape. He was not physically very strong, and we pushed him in the weight room like never before. We pushed him, 3 days a week, pretty much year round in the weight room, under our watch, and then more on their own, and that strength comes, and then that confidence comes, and the development, that's part of the development process. So, but our kids that are seniors now, again, we've got one going to a junior college. We've got a couple going to really, NAIA or Division III type schools, Transy and Spalding, and we've got one going to Louisville. We've got them going everywhere. We've got one going to Xavier. We've got one going to Wren Lake. I mean, the reality of we got one, a pitcher going to Bellarmine. So we've got, Division I kids.
And you got one maybe going to the MLB?
We've got one that could be a first-round draft pick. Yeah, I mean, Daylen's.
Will he end up on a college campus? Dan McDonald wants to know this question.
No, Dan's a dear friend of mine, so I'll digress. But I think here's what I think. I think if he's a first-round draft pick, he's got to sign. I mean, I think.
Does he have an opportunity? So the knock on Daylen, and I don't know if this is a knock or not, but if you read about Daylen, the knock is he doesn't have a big arm. He's got the speed, he's got the bat, but the arm strength.
Yeah, I think that's an unfair knock,
okay.
Personally. Daylen's got a good arm. It may not be a plus major league arm, but it's a really good arm. and that will translate. Daylen's got a little work to do to improve. No pun intended, but he's got a little work to do on his footwork in the outfield.
Yeah,
we've been working on that some, but that's a process. It's a matter of breaking some older habits and developing a little bit better ones.
Sure.
But his work ethic is second to none. And let me add this about Daylen Lile. And I've said this to Jason Frakes or any of the reporters I've ever talked to from any of the outlets around town. But as great a player as he is, and he's a first-round talent, make no mistake. I mean, he's a first-round talent. He can hit a ball in any part of the zone to any part of the field with authority. And I mean, off good pitching, not just not just average high school pitching, but
that's
really
just
good.
He hits everybody he sees.
But Daylen Lile is a special player, but he's a more special young man and a better person than he is player. When you talk about the loyalty, the intensity, the work ethic, the leadership, the quiet leadership, but still the leadership nevertheless.
Yeah.
His ability to change a game, but most importantly, just his character on and off the field. And again, we're lucky to have a lot of kids like that at Trinity, right? We're lucky to attract that type of
right,
man.
of
But
course.
he's a breed apart, and I just his family is unbelievable. He's got a brother, Trey, who's a very successful local businessman, and his family is just they've been all in. And in this era, high school kids tend to because of the travel ball kind of circuit in the college recruiting earlier at earlier ages, they tend to worry more about the name on the back than they do on the front. And we preach that at Trinity. The name on the front's what matters. And from the time school starts till the end of the state tournament. And he has embodied that in every way possible.
Yeah, it would be easy for a kid to get just caught up in the hype and just think it's all about me, but it sounds like he's a great teammate.
Yeah,
right?
he is. And there's not a person in our program over the last 4 years that wouldn't say that. I mean, he was a starter as a freshman at Trinity, which is highly unusual. And the only games he's missed his entire career were his freshman year. He slid into second and dinged up his hand a little bit and was out for a couple games. And we missed him. I mean, he was a two-hole hitter as a freshman. He's a two-hole hitter as a senior and a potential, definitely a draft pick and maybe a very high draft pick. I mean, I'm hearing as high as in the teens or the early 20s
in first round.
So and again, who knows? I'm not a paid professional scout, but I talk to them every day. We have 20, 30 of them every day at our practice and at our BPs and pregame workouts, and they see what we've seen for 4 years.
So one of the things that we preach with our travel ball team is we're trying to get them to play for each other as opposed to individuals. We've got kids who get super upset if they hit a ground ball, even though they scored an RBI. They may get thrown out at first, but there was a guy on third, but they're mad they got out. We're trying to preach that, look, this is a team game, and for you to have individual success, the team needs to succeed first. And it feels like your Daylens, your Corbins, a lot of the guys on your team that you currently have now, they've bought into that.
Yes, and I don't mean this to come across the wrong way, but we basically leave them no choice. I mean, that is team first baseball. And look, if they're going to go on and play at Louisville or they're going to go on and play at college, I don't care if it's the biggest Division I school, Power 5, Division I, all the way down to the smallest NAIA school. If they're going to do that, play at that level, they're going to have to buy into team offense and team defense and understanding certain aspects. And some coaches have different philosophies. Some coaches bunt a lot. Some coaches never bunt. But whatever program you're going to go to next, you better be willing to be versatile enough to adapt to those team philosophies. And again, teams win different ways. I believe in a lot of versatility. I believe in trusting my gut in game situations in terms of when we play small ball and when we don't. But certainly that buying in is important. And look, we've got kids that get mad the same way you're talking about your kids. That's a product of just of the society today, and it probably was when I was coming up too. But I like to think it wasn't, but I'm sure I'm wrong to some extent. But at the end of the day, I tell our kids not to worry about counting the numbers, but do what counts.
Yep.
So if you're worried about doing what counts, you're not worried about a 303 average versus a 323 average. I mean, if you do what counts, you're getting it done for your team. And if you get it done for your team, make no mistake, these colleges recognize that.
Oh, yeah.
A guy that can hit the ball, 400 feet, on a regular basis is going to get signed. But, there's not very many of those guys. The guys that separate themselves for colleges, and again, we've got all 9 of our seniors committed this year. And if you look at the 6 years I've been at Trinity, we have almost every kid that's ever come through our program that wants to play in college. We've helped find a home, and they found it for themselves by working hard and by producing at a high level. But when you take all that into consideration, the reality is that what separates kids, one kid from another, is that ability to adapt, that ability to hustle down the line every time, that ability to show positive body language. That's the biggest thing, and then make great grades. I mean, that's another advantage is, you've got to be good in school. And then I tell kids all the time that that's a separator, and you better be on that. And if they're not at our school, we just they're not eligible. So it's really we're lucky to have that support.
The academic standards are really high, obviously in all the private schools. So. You brought up a point earlier, and our first topic in our first podcast was multiple sport athletes. At our age, we're dealing with some kids that are playing multiple sports and are missing baseball things for some of these other sports that they're playing. We've kind of come to the conclusion we're okay with it. We're good with the multiple sport athletes. We don't punish them. I've talked to other coaches who are like, hey, look, it's baseball season. If you miss a practice, you don't play. If you miss a game, then you miss another game, but you're going to sit on the bench, that type of thing. So I'm kind of curious how you guys handle that at Trinity, because there's this misnomer that you can't go to Trinity and play multiple sports, which is extremely far from the truth.
That's a joke. I mean, quite frankly, we've got 3 or 4 football kids right now. Our starting shortstop's an honorable mention All-State basketball player. We've got we've had wrestlers, we've had cross country runners, we've had soccer players. That's a topic for another conversation, because it isn't a conversation. It's as inaccurate as it can be.
Right.
But look, I encourage other sports. I mean, my son who plays Division I baseball now, he played football, baseball, and basketball as a freshman. Certainly, it's tough and it's a challenge, and physically and mentally, and probably more mentally, but physically as a freshman, when you're not, you haven't maybe grown as much as you will within a couple years after that, it's challenging. But I certainly encourage it. I mean, look, I know for a fact that I shouldn't say for a fact, but I mean, I can tell you from coaching that there are those kids that have different coaches and deal with different types of settings and teaching techniques and tendencies tend to adapt better to what we do. And that helps. I mean, it is certainly an advantage to have somebody that's heard from different voices and different things, and not just one voice all the time. Let me say this, as it relates to colleges, there are some colleges that say that, and it's really just eyewash. It's really just, they're really just saying it. They act like that, but then they're mad if they're not at a fall tournament they want to see them perform in. Most colleges are not that way, but I've encountered some that are, and I tell our kids, then that's probably not the school for you. If that school's recruiting you, but they're mad you're playing football, not mad, but they give you a little bit of the cold shoulder because you're not going to be at a certain fall tournament. Look, if it's my son or it's my player and I'm advising him, and there's a coach that gives him a little bit of the cold shoulder because of a commitment to a team they're in season for, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And there are a few coaches out there that are like that. I mean, it's kind of a double standard. Now, the majority of them, you talk to Coach McDonald, you talk to the coaches in the schools in state, and they'll tell you, and everyone I've had a conversation with, which is all of them at some point, they'll tell you they're fine with multiple sport athletes. And, as it relates to younger kids, kids in the travel ball circuit right now, the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, I think they're foolish for not playing another sport as long as they enjoy it. I mean, I hate to see people get pushed into a sport, but I certainly encourage them playing. I don't care if it's tennis, I don't care if it's football, I don't care if it's basketball. Lacrosse tends to be a tough one because the seasons overlap. So that kind of separates some, kids have to make a choice there maybe sometimes. But in general, I think for people to try to get a kid to play baseball from February through June, on a travel circuit, or July, and then take a couple weeks off and start beginning in August and play August through October or November, to me, that's a mistake, unless that's what the kid, all he wants to do.
Right.
I mean, if that's all they want to do, then you've got to be really careful with the arm and with some other things. But I think a kid going on to football or basketball or tennis or golf or whatever it may be I'm a huge proponent and encourage all my kids to do so.
All right, I got a few things I want to ask you here. So Rick and I went to your first game of the season, and we were blown away by the plate discipline of your players. A lot of pitches, taking a lot of pitches, and it really felt like they were waiting for that right pitch to hit. Dealing with younger kids, I tend to give the take a pitch sign probably more than I should. I'm giving a kid a strike because we're trying to get a kid to second so we don't get doubled up. It was interesting. So the day after that game, I talked to you on the phone and I said, hey, I asked you about taking the pitches, and you said I didn't give the take sign once the entire night, which I thought was incredible because Rick and I, we were like, man, I mean, they're not swinging.
Yeah,
so
it seemed like, they were just just like you said, waiting for that perfect pitch, which in all actuality, that's probably the right thing to do. But yeah, we felt like they were taking way more pitches than maybe they should have or could have.
Yeah. So, Rick, I'm kind of curious if dealing with kind of the younger, your 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, do you think coaches should be given the take sign? Is it all just situational? Should it be less than more? What's your opinion there?
Well, I've got a very strong opinion on that, Teague, and that is one. The credit for that goes to our hitting coordinator, Trinity Ryan Wheat. I mean, he's an incredible hitting coach. You look at our numbers over the time he's been with me, which has been the last 5 years, and they speak for themselves. And we study the data a lot. We talk about it a lot. We plan with it a lot. We use it as a teaching tool. We don't, like I said, we talk about doing what counts, not counting the numbers, and that applies to this as well. And by that, I mean, if a kid's hitting 215, but he's got 28 RBIs, he's doing something right in the right times. But we'd like for him to be hitting 315 or 415 naturally. But,
sure.
But the reality is we use that data to teach. We use that data to instruct. And if you look at the numbers, and this is as black and white as it gets, this is no manipulation of anything. But if you look at the numbers, when we're swinging at bad pitches, the numbers go down drastically. To your point about me telling you the next day, and I remember that conversation vividly, I didn't give the take one sign. I've probably given the take 5 times or 6 times all year long.
All year long.
All year long. Our take sign, if you watch us play, our take sign is the most simple sign on the planet. You can't miss it. And we only take in certain situations. Now, that's because, again, from a player development standpoint and from a teaching standpoint and a coaching standpoint, we've tried to ingrain and teach plate discipline.
Well, the kids are disciplined, so you kind of know you don't have to give that take
Yeah,
sign because
and-
they're not going to swing.
Well,
at a bad
that
pitch,
we know that from a lot of we do a lot of scrimmaging, a lot of simulated at bats, a lot of stuff in practice to prepare for that. But there are some kids that have more of a tendency to swing at bat. I've got a freshman in college right now. He's a part-time starter at West Virginia. A kid named Braden Berry played last year. He didn't have great discipline as a junior, but by the time his senior year rolled around, his plate discipline was a lot better. He's a kid that had a ton of extra base hits. Had as many doubles and home runs almost as he had singles, and he had a lot of speed too. He could turn a single into a double, but he and a double into a triple for that matter. But with the discipline, we have to, Rick. We have to know our personnel, right? And I encourage you to do the same. You might want to give the take to some kids to try to teach them, and other kids let them learn on their own. And that's what we do. I mean, we again, we're lucky that we've got, we practice a lot, and we more than you guys do. We go every day. So we're learning that about our kids. And it starts really early on. And you see that progression from a sophomore to the junior to senior. If they get better at it, you can trust them more. And to your point, we have to trust them. So we try to teach them that.
Yeah. And we got some kids that you give that take sign, to get a runner on first to second to eliminate that force out. And, they kind of freak out a little bit. Oh my gosh! What
Now I got
they
a
threw
strike.
me a strike. Now I got a strike on me. Now
strike.
what? That's one pitch I don't get.
Hey, listen, and make no mistake, there's a major difference between high school baseball and travel
Right,
baseball
sure.
to the younger ages. But if you have a kid, and again, we're still, especially with that not having a season last year, right? We did a lot of off-season stuff last year before the pandemic hit, but not having a season. I mean, what I'm seeing this year in high school baseball across the board, us included, and we're maybe as bad or worse than most people, but the base running's taking a step backwards. The discipline to some extent is taking a step backwards, but the younger kids, the kids in travel ball, the kids that play, in tournaments each weekend, if you can trust them to. And again, this is a big if, but if you're giving that take to steal kid to second, one in high school it doesn't work because catchers throw.
Right.
Everybody's got a catcher.
Everybody's got a catcher who can throw you out.
So most of the time in high school you're stealing off the pitcher. Now that's relative, but you're stealing off the pitcher and it's time to the plate as much as you are, a catcher throwing to second.
And there's not as many kids on your team that are just going to take second. Like
Right.
It's nothing,
No, there's no doubt. I mean, I've got some kids that have the green light all the time, and I take it off. And there's some kids that never have the green light, but I might put it on in a given situation, pending the catcher, pending the pitcher's times to the plate or their times to second. So, but back to your point on the thing, I would encourage coaches, and I try to do this when I coach, 10, 11, 12-year-old travel ball. I would encourage coaches that if you're giving that take just to steal and trying to stay out of that force, I get it. But if I would encourage you to think more about putting the steal on. And especially if it's a kid has some ability, and yours all do, and some discipline, hopefully most of them do, or they're learning that, give them the freedom to swing. Because if they swing and hit one in the gap and that kid's already running, he's going to score. If it's the ball in the gap, he's not running, he might make it to third. So those are things that, and then they're teaching points. And you guys have got, three, 4 coaches. So you're able to teach when they come off the field.
Yep.
I think that's, again, it's being on the same page with every coach, especially at travel ball level where you're not, you don't live together like high school coaches essentially do during the season. It's different, but I would encourage that to anybody.
All right. So another thing that we've dealt with at 11 years old is I have been a Nazi on arm care. So my son broke his elbow throwing a changeup, believe it or not, early in our 10U season. And honestly, his arm hadn't been the same since. So we've been very, very careful on throwing different pitches, whether it be curveballs or whatever, sliders, whatever it may be. So we've seen it a ton this year. So early on in the season, we're seeing kids throw curveballs left and right. So what happened was, as our kids are warming up, they're throwing curveballs at each other. And what we saw is they're all doing it wrong. And then all of a sudden, we've got a couple kids coming in that have pitching coaches. Or they play for a middle school team and they got a different coach. And we see them taking their arms and just twisting as hard as they can and doing things, in our opinion, was going to hurt them in the long run. So what we've done is we took our kids and we taught them kind of the safe way. This was from your suggestion, by the way, the safe way to throw a curveball. And we let them throw it maybe 2 times, 3 times an inning when they pitch. So we're doing it very minimally, but we're trying to show them, basically we're just trying to get to the nose of the baseball. We're not doing any twisting. We're just kind of coming down with it. What's your opinion on different pitches, and what age should you start trying to do some different type of pitches?
Yeah, I mean, look, my background when I played college baseball, I was a pitcher. So,
and you were a U of L coach. So,
and I was the coach of Louisville for a couple of years, correct? A volunteer coach. So, but from my playing days and working with a lot of young pitchers, doing instruction, coaching high school ball, coaching travel ball for 8 years, like I did. My perspective is this, and I don't mean to correct you, but you mentioned earlier, you said the safe way to throw a curveball. I'm not sure there's a safe way. There's a best way or a better way.
Okay, fair enough.
Instead of safe. I don't know that anything's ever safe when you're an overhand movement, because it's an unnatural movement, as any doctor will tell you. I remember a doctor telling me way back when I was in college when I had a frayed rotator cuff, and eventually I've had a couple surgeries on that arm. But he's like, an underhand movement in softball is a natural movement. That's the way you walk. That's the way your arms swing. That's why softball pitchers can throw every day. Baseball pitchers throw and then they rest 2 or 3 days or 4 days and then they throw again because it's an unnatural movement. And I had never heard that description, and it's always stuck with me, and it's so true. And you hit on another key point. Kids have different coaches. They might have a pitching instructor they go to. They may have a middle school coach. They have a travel ball coach. They have a dad, maybe, or a mom,
Sure.
Or an uncle. Or a cousin, or a neighbor kid, or an older brother. I mean, there's a lot of influences. Or YouTube.
Right. No, right.
No doubt. And depending on what YouTube channel, it could be good or could be bad. That being said, you are managing a lot of different scenarios, and it's gotten worse over the last 4 or 5 years. Again, I've been out of coaching travel ball now for three years, but haven't done it for 8 or 10 years before that. I dealt with some of the same things. Only now it's exacerbated. It's even bigger. But so when we talk about throwing a curveball, I teach you stand behind it and pulling straight over the top of it, pulling it straight down, making it look like a fastball as long as you can for deception, and then pulling straight down. The twisting and the gyrations, and we're all sitting here doing this, we're sitting here at the desk, but the twisting and the gyrations can cause some more torque, some more tension, can lead to some injury. However, again, and I've seen, we see arm injuries every year at the high school level and all the way up to Major League Baseball, all the way down to Little League level. It's amazing the young kids that are having surgeries and stuff, and surgeries and so forth.
Tommy John surgeries.
Yeah, major surgeries. And we've had one pitcher this year that did. He's a football, was an all region, all state type tight end, and big strong kid for us, that Gavin Simpkins, and he was throwing before we were playing Jeffersonville on a Friday night, and he was in the bullpen warming up, and he felt something pop, and he had to have surgery. He had it last Wednesday, and Godspeed to his recovery. But he plays football, and so he doesn't throw year round. He didn't throw from July the 10th when they started football practice through December and went to the state championship. So he came to us in January. We eased him in, and I can't tell you if that injury was because he went too much too soon, or that injury is because it was just inherent and it was just genetic and it was going to happen. Who knows? anyone that figures that out, will make a fortune. But my point is that I'm hearing from a lot of friends that have younger kids right now they're heavy into travel ball right now. Right, it's gotten hot and they're heavy into their season. They've been throwing since January or February, and now they're having arm problems. And I'm hearing from several people this situation. Look, I'm a big believer in kind of the Nolan Ryan theory. You've got to throw a lot. I'm also a big believer in the kind of the Jaeger theory of listen to your arm. I don't believe in every single concept they teach, but to the nth degree. But I do believe in listening to your arm and let your arm be your guide. I think you have to throw. I think you have to throw regularly. I'm a believer that even the day you pitch, let's say you throw 4 or 5 innings, you throw 70, 80, 90 pitches. I believe the next day you ought to at least play catch from 45, 50. Mm-hmm. Our guys from 60 feet, just because that's the pitching distance, but your guys 45 feet for and I'm talking 3 or 4 minutes. I'm not talking forever.
Right.
Just to train the arm and to get the movement back and a little bit of emotion, and then you've got to rest and recover. But your kids are going to shortstop or going to center field or going to first base
or catching.
And so are our kids in a lot of cases. So. The catching thing is I was a pitcher and a catcher in high school. I mean, I was 10-1 on the mound, and I caught like 20 games. So of our 35 games, I was pitching or catching in 2 of them. And we didn't think twice about it back in the 80s, right? I mean, it was just what you did. I saw a catcher in college at Memphis that was their catcher all the time, and then he would take his gear off and go to the mound and close games out. He was a stud closer in the Metro Conference. You don't see that anymore.
No.
But I've got a kid right now that's a catcher and a pitcher, and he's a good one. I mean, he's a good catcher. He's a good pitcher. He's a junior, so he's more of a pitcher because our starting catcher is another junior,
right.
but so he pitches more.
Who's a great player in his own right.
And Nate Tins is a kid that does both, and he loves it. I mean, we've talked to him about going to one or the other, but he loves it. And again, I put that decision in the family of the kid and the family, because but we take, we make sure if he pitches today that he's not catching tomorrow, right?
No, I understand.
At the high school level, but in your case, you don't have that option a lot of times. So I think it's, and they're younger, so they're a little more, their muscles are not quite as developed, and their tendons are, but is that good or bad? I'm no doctor.
So at what age do you start developing some of these other pitches?
Personally, my belief is that about 12 or 13, you have to start developing those other pitches. You have to have a feel for look, any breaking ball is a feel pitch, in my opinion. Feel meaning you've got to throw it. You've got to throw it to feel when it needs to come out of your hand so you can get the location you need to get.
Yeah.
A breaking ball just hangs over the middle of the plate is no good.
Right.
A slider that doesn't slide, is kind of the cliche,
Sure.
but that doesn't break or bite down, or a cutter that doesn't run is not any good. I think at 11 they should be introduced to some of this stuff. I think at 12, and again, each kid's a little different depending on their, a 12U kid might be an 11-year-old, right? I mean, some 12U kids might be almost 13.
Sure.
So there's a wide range there potentially of development and skill set development level. But I think at 11 and 12 is when those pitches are introduced. I think by 13, when they start to move back, on the mound, they ought to be more prevalent. My rule when I had a travel team was at 11 and 12, we started talking about breaking balls, and I didn't encourage sliders at all. I just didn't, because I think that's harder on your elbow than the curveball. But we really focused on changeups from the get-go. We started changeups early on. At 9, 10, we changed ups, and then at 11, 12, we introduced breaking balls. And my kids at their 12-year-old year, and I've told you this before, Teague, said this to you a couple of times. Our 12-year-olds were allowed to throw one curveball an inning.
Yep.
And we would call some pitches, let them throw some pitches on their own. And again, calling pitches wasn't ego coach Rick. It was more just teaching them sequences and what to look for, and then giving them some latitude to shake off, just so they could have some fun. They can watch Max Scherzer do it, so they can do it. And so, but I would try to manage that. I mean, and not overcoach. Sometimes I did, and I was wrong, but try to manage that in terms of teaching, not micromanaging, but we would give them a chance to throw one breaking ball, and I would always call that. And if they threw a good one, and this, people are probably thinking, one, that's crazy. If they threw a good one, we didn't call any more than that inning. If they threw a bad one, I call it again. If they threw a bad one, I might call it one more time. I'm trying to give them a chance to develop some confidence in it,
okay,
and make sure they can throw it. And I'm watching them too. So if they throw one that breaks and a kid swings at it, but it's out of his arm in a funny slot, and he's put himself in some type of danger, I would talk to him about it. We would go over it in between innings. But in general, if they threw a good one, then, man, they're building some confidence. So the next inning, I'm looking forward to calling the next one, and nobody can do it again. And then, by the fourth inning, if they're still pitching, maybe we call 2 one inning. But it was really, really limited. But it was really geared towards helping them to develop confidence in it, not just throw it and hope it breaks.
Makes a
trying
ton
to
of
really
sense.
teach them
Sure.
to get it over the plate. And look, there are so many times in high school and college ball, even in professional baseball, if you get the breaking ball over the plate, you're going to get an out in two strike or certain situations. Not always. And, obviously in pro ball, it's a little bit different. But there are so many times we said at high school games, we say, just get this over the plate. This, we know the hitter has no chance. The swing's long or the swing's choppy or there's something we notice. We know if we get over the plate, it's going to be an out. End of story. With two strikes. And, when you have a kid out there, can throw it on command, then you're going to get that most of the time. When you have a kid that's not as good with it, you're hoping to get it. But I just think breeding that confidence in these kids is really important. And so I kind of took a reverse approach in terms of, most guys that they threw a bad one, they would. I mean,
They wouldn't do it again.
if they threw a good
They
one,
didn't
they'd
want to
keep
throw it again.
They, well, and if they threw a good one, they keep going back to the horse that got them there, and they throw that curveball over and over, and the next thing you know is they're throwing half curveballs.
Yeah.
We watch the Little League World Series. I mean, I love that production. It's fun to watch, but I hate watching 12-year-olds, and they may be almost 13 or they may be 11-year-olds, but they're throwing 60% breaking balls.
Yep.
I mean, you've heard me. You've got to throw the fastball for strikes before you really focus on anything else.
So, you've been in the travel ball circuit. You're obviously a high school coach now. So you're dealing with, 14-year-olds roughly coming into their freshman year. What are you looking for, other than, pure God-given talent to play baseball, but what else are you looking for at maybe that, 14-year-old and maybe even what can these 10, 11-year-olds that have a desire to play high school baseball, what can they develop as far as habits and, being on a team versus just flat out being good at baseball? Is there other characteristics and, that it factor you're looking for?
There are many, and make no mistake, there's not a high school town and team or a high school in town that you're guaranteed to make the team when you show up. Anymore. Baseball it's kind of shrunk in numbers some, but it's also gotten better. I mean, there are a lot more talented players now than there ever have been because of the travel ball, because of the individual instruction, and some of it's overkill, but it's a result of where we are today. The it factors, are no different than they are in life. Showing up on time, having a great attitude, body language. Body language is such a big thing. Not only, we talk about it with our kids that are going to be going to college, because I've got kids right now, juniors, that are trying to get recruited, and we're trying to help them. But if they hang their head, when something goes bad, what is that coach college coaches can't get on the road again until June the 1st. But what is that college coach going to think? They're probably seeing some videos and stuff right now. So what are they going to think if they're hanging their head? So you can't just take a junior and, in my opinion, and just change that overnight. That starts at that 14-year-old freshman,
because they've likely been doing it since they were 9.
They've likely been allowed to get away with it. And look,
Right.
I'm not trying to, I'm not the world's greatest parent. You can ask my son. I promise you, he'll tell you I'm not. But that starts at home, right?
Yeah,
There's an element of that starts at home, and everybody comes from a different background and different, challenges at home. So there's no criticism other than as coaches and as male mentors, we've got to encourage that. And sometimes, you've got to force it on them. I mean, it's your all's age that is critical, because when they get to that high school, any high school in Louisville, any high school in Southern Indiana, any high school in the state of Kentucky, there's going to be competition. I mean, it's just, and so those it factors, body language is critical, attitude and just being, and again, I say being on time. That's such a simple thing, but it's so very important. And look, I used to be this kind of, being a retired policeman, retired homicide detective, I had this kind of paramilitary mindset, and I'm sure my first couple teams would scoff at the notion that I'm kind of soft today compared to 6 years ago at the high school level. And maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but different days I'm probably different ways. But consistency is important, so we focus on that. But the reality for me is that sometimes you got to get on the kids, but you can't get on them until you earn their respect. So as a travel ball coach or as a high school coach, earning that respect of the families, of the kids. So I can't get on a kid for, if he's a little late, because he may have had a parent who couldn't get off work. So I get it, right? I mean, That's a different scenario than a kid
these younger ages, it's on the parent.
Absolutely. So you have to be flexible. And that's something I've learned. I mean, certainly even in high school, a kid 14 years old didn't drive him to practice.
Right.
So, on a Saturday, if he's a couple minutes late, it may be that. But if he shows up and he doesn't have his hat and doesn't have his bat and he's a little late, then what's going on, right? I mean, you've got to be able to see through see the bigger picture and what's happening. But But Rick, that's a great question. I think if for younger coaches, if you can just stress the body language and the ability to recover. The cliche in baseball is it's a game of failure, right? You 3 times out of 10 it's success, right? And a batting average. Well, I hate saying it's a game of failure because we promote positive, glass half full, success-minded practices, drills, workouts, games, winning scores, schoolwork, family relationships, treating your girlfriend right, treating your mom right, doing the right things all the time. But that starts, with how do they, how do they show up? What do they do? Is their attitude good? Because if your attitude's bad, everything else is going to go bad in the practice or a game. If their attitude's good, it's good. And when you fail, how do you respond to that? From Bible verses to cliches, cliches on billboards to everything on this earth, the real challenge is how you get up from a fall, right? And so if they fail, if they have a bad day or, a bad, even, you guys have heard me say this a million times when I've come out with your team, it all starts with how you warm up. And I think that is such an overlooked, I don't know how many times, and I did it some when I was, first started coaching travel ball, but how many times do you watch the coach and 3 or 4 dads or 2 or 3 moms over here by the dugout chit-chatting, and kids are out there warming up, and they're out there jack-legging around, which is what they do when they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
It's what they do. It's what I do sometimes still at 52. But, as a coach, it's really, really critical to me to set the standard with how they warm up. How do they throw? How do they play? The old saying of playing catch. I used to never say play catch. I thought it sounded cheesy. It's like something I saw on Leave It to Beaver or something way back in the day. But playing catch is what I say now because truthfully, we're playing catch. It's not necessarily warming up. It is warming up, but they should have already done their dynamic stretch and their static stretch. And now they're throwing. So they're playing catch. So how you throw the ball matters. You want to get a 4-seam grip and backspin it and throw it to your target and hit him in the chest. But it's equally as important to catch the ball. And high school baseball, travel baseball, college baseball, and sometimes Major League Baseball is simply about playing pitch and catch. The teams that play pitch and catch best are the ones that in big situations have success. And I'm a big, big believer in that. That might be catching a ground ball, might be catching a ball over your shoulder, might be catching a ball thrown right to you.
Sure.
Second baseman taking a throw from the catcher and catching it and tagging a guy and holding on to the ball.
Sure.
And I think that all starts with how you warm up and how you play catch after that initial phase. And once you get good at playing catch, now you can start playing catch and snap the ball behind your back or playing catch and maybe doing some things that might simulate a running catch or a diving catch. And so I think that's important. I think, again, I watch our kids. Sometimes we get on them, sometimes we just watch them, but we've always taught them first. And if I've taught them for 2 or 3 days, in the beginning of the fall, like I talked about earlier, and then we tell them to go, they do we have a little cone drill and a ladder drill. We put them all through, and then boom, they go to left field or they go down the right field line and they start throwing. I'm watching. And again, that's the kind of anal coach that I can be. But, the ones that are, that, and we talk a lot about this too, and it is a cliche, and I hate cliches, but I talk about our, team, and I think this applies to 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old baseball as well, but player-led instead of player-fed type mentality. If you want a player-led team, you want somebody on the team saying, "Hey guys, let's go. Let's get serious about getting loose. Let's get serious about playing catch." You don't necessarily need a coach barking down their throats because they tend to respond to each other as well as they do coaches in certain situations, especially things that they don't think are as important as others. Everybody thinks the bunt coverage, the first and third defense, the diving plays at shortstop are more important. They're not. The most important thing is playing pitch and catch, which starts at the very beginning.
All right, I got a couple more questions, and we're going to play this little contest at the end. All right, so at our age, so at our 11U and maybe younger, let's say you've got a kid that gets a ball hit to them at shortstop, and they boot it, and it's kind of a game-costing type thing. Either they get it and they throw it over the first baseman, or they let a ball go in between the legs that they would have had a million times. How do you handle that as a coach? So you just lost a game. One of your better players just booted it. What is the appropriate approach there?
Well, the appropriate approach is to pat them on the back and tell them, we'll get better. I mean, that's the appropriate approach, and that's what you have to do. Again, and from an analytical perspective, if they're doing everything right and the physical error happens, it's part of life. It's part of the game. It stinks, and we hate it, and we might kick a cup in the dugout, and we might be mad, but that is acceptable.
Well, the kid's going to be devastated.
Sure
I
he
mean,
is.
you know,
No matter what.
you got to
know,
pick
and
that
you've
kid
got
up.
you as the adult male figure, and that's the first one to him. You've got to be the guy that gives him a hug. Maybe not in front of everybody, but you've got to be the guy that pats him on the back and says, "Hey, man, life goes on."
Yeah.
So that said, again, from an analytical approach and a teaching approach, they get 4 or 5 balls, maybe thrown from the first baseman in between innings at shortstop, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. How serious were they when they fielded those balls and threw across the diamond? Were they practicing appropriately? Was their head in the game? If their head wasn't in the game, you probably already have them out. But if they're your best player, you've got to make choices, and you're probably not going to take them out, or one of your best players. But I look at it from a perspective of, was it a physical or was it a mental error? Because even the one thing I've learned in the last 5 years is a lot of physical errors are as much mental as they're physical. You might miss a baseball because you look at second base too soon. That's strictly a physical error. But, if you're trying to turn 2, let's say on a ground ball to short. But if it's a really slow roller and there's no way you're going to turn 2, and yet you're still trying to go so fast that you bobble the ball, that's as much a mental error as it is physical, because you got to know as a shortstop, you're not going to turn 2. Just get it and flip it a second, get the out, and minimize the damage. So, and again, you're going to have to pat that kid on the back because he does feel terrible, Rick. Any kid would. Anybody that cares. If they don't, they're not the kid you want on your team.
But what's the teaching moment? So, of course, I get that part, but how do you try to eliminate that from happening again?
You talk to them individually. You go back to practice and you go through those scenarios. You walk through them, and then you run through them. You walk through them in terms of, you might just roll ground balls. We have what we call green and white days. So every day we have some individual work. We call it pre-practice routine. So outfitters go do a green day or a white day. Pitchers have some drills, green drills, the same drill they did with you guys.
Yep.
White drills. Infielders, they're fielding balls to their left, backhand, forehand. They're doing slow rollers. They're doing scoops. They're doing picks and tags. They're doing block balls. So during that session the next day, you might take that kid individually and say, "Hey, man, this is where it was." So then maybe we get together as a team and we walk through it, because next time or next year it might be a different shortstop, or the next day it might, kid might be on the mound, it might be a different shortstop, or it might be a third baseman. So the practical approach is, when you talk to them individually, you pat them on the back, tell them, "Hey, it's life. We'll get better," and you don't have a choice. I mean, there's not, even if it's the last game of the year, you don't have a choice. You can't. I mean, sulking and crying over it doesn't do any good.
No,
so,
of course.
Being disappointed, that's part of the emotional roller coaster of a day-to-day human being. But, and we try to tell our kids to stay as level as you can day-to-day, because I think that's the best way to have, sustained success and be consistent. But, they're going to be down. So you've got to pick them up, and then you've got to go back and reteach it. And you can put that scenario, it's not quite the same because it's a practice, but you can put that scenario in front of that player again. Hopefully he's better for it. In our case, I hope by the time you get to college, they're better at it, or the next day, or the next big game, or the elimination game. And then you also hope your backup or your third baseman, your second baseman learn from it as well. And I just think it's important not to brush that situation aside, cover it. Now, if it's just a routine ground ball they boot it. If there's nothing, they were doing everything else right, I think sometimes you just ignore it. I mean, I think in that case, you pat them on the buzz, they walk by, but you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
If they're a really insecure kid, you may have to say something.
Yeah.
If they're a pretty secure kid, and again, at high school, it's different than 8, 10, 11-year-old travel ball, but there's where the relationships matter. There's where the respect factor matters. There's where you as a coach, knowing, being confident in your own skin, knowing your relationship with that kid is good enough to handle it one way or the other. But I think how you handle that's really, really important. And I know for me it is. And I've had success and failure, but when I failed at it, I make sure I know that kid better the next time, or whatever the case may be.
Look, as a coach, that's something that I know we and myself, I'm trying to get better at every day. Body language is one of the things, especially with my own kid.
Sure.
He gets out, he strikes out, he gets out. You could probably see me on the sideline, walking around with my head down. I've got to get better at that, because the body language piece that that comes from the coaches too. The kids see us having bad body language. Well, they're going to do the same thing. So that part of coaching, I'm trying to get better at. The part of picking the kids back up and being able to teach them to where, when they're in that situation again, they have a better chance of succeeding. That's something that we're trying to do. And so this podcast, Rick, I want this to be a resource. So we're hoping that a lot of these travel ball coaches in our area are listening and taking some advice. Every week, what we're trying to do is give a new drill that maybe somebody that could potentially do in their practice. Last week, we gave a drill that we're using a lot in our practice. Do you have a drill that you would suggest, not necessarily a high school age kid, but kind of the younger travel ball that coaches need to be looking at doing in practice?
Relative to a specific position, or just
period?
in general?
Give me one of your favorite drills.
where maybe the whole team's involved.
Yeah,
whole
team involved. One of the things, now this is simple, but one of the things you've always told me, what's super important is long toss. And we try to incorporate that quite a bit. But is there a drill that you feel like every team should be doing?
Yeah. I mean, there are several, and that's maybe as hard a question as you could ask because there's so many things that you want to work on.
A bunch, sure.
But no, I think I think one thing that's important, and again, this is somewhat simplistic, and you guys don't do it. You do it at the high school, you do it at the college level, but we have what we call in and out, where we just take a round of pregame in and out, where you get some ground balls and fly balls, and I'm a big believer in creating some competition. Right. I mean, we do this thing where at the end of BP, we try to get them to hit a couple barrels in a row. They, and we don't do it every day, but they hit a couple barrels, they stay in the cage. If they don't, they get out. A barrel might be a really deep fly ball that you just got under, but you really barreled up. It also might be a line drive in the gap, which is a double or a triple. Sure. It might be one over the fence, which is a home run. But, trying to create some competition. But in terms of just a drill, we call it 21 outs, but you can call it 7. You all play 7 innings, don't you? Or do you play 6?
We play 6.
So you play 18 outs.
Okay.
And you put everybody at their position, and you hit balls, and you make sure everybody gets a ball, and they've got to catch it, field it, throw it, and the other guy's got to catch it, and if they do, it's an out. So that's 1 out. So hit a ground ball short, he fields it, he throws it over to first base, 1 out. And you can do this at the beginning of practice. You can do it at the end of practice. We do it a lot towards the end, just kind of as a challenge when they're a little tired. And then we hit fly balls. And for us, it might be a line drive in the gap that we've got to execute a double cut on perfectly. A little higher level than you would have a 12-year-old travel ball. But we've got to execute that. And the throw's got to hit a guy, and then he's got to catch it. And throw it to the next guy. It's got to be a one-hopper. It's got to catch it. Or we start over. We might get to 17 outs, and somebody, loses the ball in the sun. Well, we go back to 0.
Oh, then you go back to 0.
Wow. You start all the way over. So it's got to be in a row.
So it's got to be in a row. 21 in a row.
Wow.
I mean, that's to win a game. You've got to get those 21 outs. So
we might be at practice all night.
Hey,
we have
sleeping bags, boys.
we turn the lights on sometimes when this doesn't go well. But
that.
You do that, and then you got to create. You've got to create age appropriate and skill set appropriate things. If you just hit 21 fly balls, we're going to master that every time. Well, we better, right? but if we're making an execute a double cut or a double play ball, then it's a little different. We might throw down a bunt. The catcher's got to field it, and we don't necessarily have runners, but we'll tell them where the runners are. Or sometimes with our we'll have 2 teams, 2 teams of 9, and the team of 9 that's out there, the other guys are running. And so they've got to execute, that scenario with runners. But I mean, that's probably my favorite. I don't know if it's a drill. It's but it's a challenge and it's competition. And if you have 2 teams, now you're not going to have 18 guys, but
we got 11.
If you have that scenario, then they're competing against each other. Winner might, do a little different type of conditioning after practice, or maybe does the cleanup for the field that day, or whatever the case may be.
That's a good one.
Chases all the foul balls or the home run balls or whatever.
So we'll need to start that at the beginning of practice. Hopefully we can finish by the end of practice.
And believe me, we've had days where we've just gotten mad, thrown the phone, go down, and walked to the field. Right? I mean, and then there's other days where it's really good. So, but again, some of that's we can manage that too if we wanted. If we wanted them to. If we challenge them a lot and make really difficult plays, we're trying to get a point across. And there's other days where, hey, it's build some confidence and let's get this right.
All right, we're going to end in a little contest here. So these are some situations that we've been through. So Rick may actually have a little bit better of understanding because we've actually been through some of these. And I'm curious, Rick, if you've seen these kind of at the high school level. And these might be super simple, but I think there are some coaches that are a little bit confused on what some of these rules are. So these are the rules questions. When batting, a batter gets hit in the very bottom part of their hand right here in the knuckles. Are the hands part of the bat, or is that a hit by pitch?
That's a hit by pitch.
So we had an umpire last year tell us almost break Rick's son's hand.
The hand's part of the bat.
He told us it was part of the bat. So we're arguing that's a hit by pitch, but
if it hits a knob, it's part of the bat. If it hits the hand, it's the hand.
Right. So and it clearly hit his hand.
Unless you're saying he's swinging.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly right, Rick.
Yeah. So all right.
Or bunting.
Yeah.
So tie goes to the runner.
Don't get me started. That's a judgment. That's a judgment. There's no in the, and I've talked to umpires about this. Just and friends of mine that are umpires. Some of them high level. ACC, SEC type umpires. There is no tie. Theoretically, there's no tie.
There's no tie.
Right. There's no tie. So theoretically, it's
almost
they
impossible.
either beat it or they don't.
Where did that come from?
That's baseball folklore, I guess. Because when I grew up, it was always tie goes to the runner. We always, we just like you're asking.
Yeah,
when we played hot box in the backyard,
tie went to the runner.
Tie went to the runner.
You always hear that.
Yeah.
Look, as a pitcher,
there's no instant replay, at our level, even at the high school level.
Absolutely not. And the other thing is that that's a judgment thing. So they're in their mind, there's no tie. Either that the throw got into his glove. And look, major leaguers define that now on these replays.
Yeah.
If the ball hits the back of the glove, they're calling that an out before the runner hits the bag. To me, again, this is a ball hit the back of the glove and pop out. Now, if it does pop out, there's no replay because they've called them safe. But Major League Baseball, I read about this. Major League Baseball had to come up with some direct, specific parameters. And the parameter was the ball hits the back of the glove, it's considered a catch as long as he secures it. So if it hits the glove, there's still an instant before you squeeze it. If you think about that. But how do you say squeeze it? Hitting the back of the glove, you can visually see.
Well, it's better than being in the glove because your glove can be that big around and it's in there, but it hasn't really hit yet.
It hadn't hit, and so the Major League says the back of the glove. It hits the back of the glove. I've heard them talk about it on Reds broadcast and on ESPN and so forth. But let me tell you, talk about tie goes the runner. I believed in that as a kid, and I was a hitter and a pitcher and a catcher and a third baseman and an outfielder. Well. When I started pitching in college, my mindset was when in doubt, they're out, right? That's the advantage of the pitcher.
Amen. I like that. All right, last one. So this happened to us, may have been last year, maybe 2 years ago. My son was on third base, and a line drive was hit right at him. So standing on the bag, he ducks, puts his shoulder down, and hits him right in the shoulder. Is he safe or is he out?
He's on the base.
He's on the base.
Running the bases.
No, he's on the base.
But he's not a defender.
No.
He's the offensive base runner.
Yes, he's the offensive base runner. He's on third base. He had both feet on the base. So the ball, line drive, he ducks. He tries to get out of the way. He does everything he can to get out of the way, but it hits him in the shoulder.
And that's easy. That's easy. He's safe. He's on the base. He's protected. If he's in foul territory, it's a foul ball.
What if he's off the base?
He's off the base and hits him, he's out.
Okay.
If he's in fair territory.
Right.
So you could theoretically be standing in fair territory and leaning backwards, and if it hits you and the ball's in foul territory, then you're still in fair territory. That would be, you'd get a bunch of different interpretations on that. But if you're on the base and the ball hits you, it's a matter of is it fair or foul? Because if you're on the base, 99.9% of the time your whole body's going to be in fair territory. It hits you. It's just a live ball.
Yeah, it's a fair ball.
So this is open for discussion because the research that we have done. Now that was the call, so we ended up throwing a fit and got that call overturned and got him safe because he was trying to get out of the way. The rule, however, is the bases are in fair territory. Fair territory. A runner is out when hit by a fair batted ball while touching a base, except when it's an infield fly. If he would have had 1 foot on the foul territory and 1 foot on the base, he would have been safe. But because he had both feet on the base and crouching, technically he would have been out.
Okay, so then you've taught me something. So what rule is that? What organization is that from?
That's from the NHFS.
NFHS?
Yes.
High School Federation?
Yep.
So both feet on the bag, they're saying fair ball.
Now here's the other thing.
That's a new one for me.
So it depends too. Now, does the third baseman have a play? So if the third baseman had a play on it, then they're deeming the runners being out.
Let me interject here. If the third baseman is in front of the base runner, then it's a live ball. It's got to be a live ball. If you're running second to third and the shortstop's already made a play, or it's already gone past him and hits you, it's a live ball.
Right.
If it hits you and you're in front of the runner and it precludes him from being able to make a play, you're out. That's the rule.
Correct.
That's high school. That's a major league rule.
That's the rule.
So you're saying that applies here as well?
I'm saying it applies if the base runner is in front of the third baseman. So think about it in opposite. And he's just simply on the bag, but trying to get out of the way. Technically, he'd be out. If he got
okay.
hit.
And you know what? That makes perfect sense. And I stand corrected, obviously, which I'm glad to know, because the line drive essentially is the same thing as a ground ball.
Correct.
And that's a common misnomer too. People think that ball hits the runner, he's out. If the infield's in, let's say the bases are loaded, and there's a hard ground ball, and the runner from second to third gets hit, it's gone past the parallel angle of the shortstop,
right,
to the closest base,
right.
If it's gone past him, hits the runner, he's not out. But if the infield's back, and he hits him in front of there.
That's interesting. That's a.
Yeah,
So if the runner's in
if it
front,
hit him anywhere.
the rule is if it precludes the infielder from making a play.
Correct.
Now, if you intentionally get hit, you're out too.
Right.
Because that's an obstruction.
Right.
But so that would fall under my understanding is that would fall under the obstruction section of the rule book. But if you're just running and you get hit, and that could be a line drive too. That doesn't have to be a ground ball. I think where I got thrown for a loop there was I didn't think about the runner in front or back. I was just thinking on the base, you're safe on the base type thing. But I guess, and this is where I've learned something. I guess then that defaults to the whole where's the
defender?
If the third baseman's back, he didn't have a chance to make that catch.
Yeah.
So that would make sense.
I think from a teaching standpoint too, we've got to teach. You got to have 1 foot in foul territory.
Well,
because in that situation he's safe.
Why wasn't that kid leading off? Huh?
Yeah,
why was he on the base?
I don't. That's a great point.
So,
That's a great point.
It was a teaching moment. So we teach our kids obviously to lead off in foul territory.
And it's a teaching moment for me right now. Oh yeah, leading off. That's that's a ABC
that's
thing. But that's a great learning moment for me because the line drive thing kind of threw me for a loop. But it definitely makes sense that it defaults to the whole where's the defender. If he's behind it, then it hits him. He didn't have a chance because the truth is he could have made a diving catch and caught that ball.
Correct.
So by getting hit,
you're
keeping them from making a play.
That's basically what the rules say.
That's what defaults, and that makes perfect sense. So thank you.
If you have an opportunity to send your son to one of the Trinity camps, we highly recommend it. Rick, what are your Trinity camps looking like this year? When are they?
Our camps are June, and right now on our website that is it says sold out. It's temporarily sold out. If I can expand a little bit, I'm going to.
All right.
So our first camp is June the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and our second camp is July the 12th, 13th, and 14th, and that's one before the high school dead period and one after the high school dead period. So the July one's still wide open, although it's going to be crowded, but it's we'll have a lot of instructors there, a lot of our players and coaches, and some of our former players. So looking forward to a great 3 days of instruction.
Will it be on the new field?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's where that's why the other one's on hold right now. It's on our new field because we're kind of at capacity for that field. But there's a turf T-ball field over at St. Matthews, and there's a turf McCandless field. So we're looking to expand that a little bit and go to some other we'll all be right there together, but to another field. And we always divide it up by age group and skill set development. So those smaller kids can go to a smaller field and probably get as much or more out of it. And that's kind of our plan right now.
Rick, we could probably do this for hours, but we're going to roll this one out here. I can't thank you enough for being part. I hope that coaches listen. I hope they be able to take some advice and be able to apply this to their teams. And hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Glad to have it, and best luck to all you guys.